Hello everyone, I'm Rebecca and welcome back to my sewing room. We are continuing on with my Italian Renaissance dress this week. If you did not see last week's video, we already mocked up the bodice for this and we had a lot of dilemma in selecting the fabric. But at this point, I have cut out the fabric, or at least the bodice fabric, and I have pinned the flat lining in place. This is being flat lined with cotton canvas. And so now I am going to serge around the outsides of both of these pieces here. And at that point, they get sewn together at the shoulders, and then we just put eyelets in the side seams, and that's the bodice. I mean, obviously we will need to do finishing and decoration and stuff like that on it, but this is a rather uncomplicated bodice. We just have to hope that it fits, because I did change one thing between the mock-up and this, which is that the back of the mock-up was cut in two pieces on the bias with a center back seam, and I didn't want a center back seam, and so I cut this on the fold, as in the straight grain fold of fabric. So that means that there is going to be some stretch going across here, but there is not as much as there was when it was cut on the bias. So hopefully that's not going to be an issue. I probably should have mocked it up that way, but we do have the lacing on the sides for like a little bit of flexibility. However, we have to figure out how to lace up the sides when it's hard to reach a side seam to do lacing. So that's going to be a whole other issue with this project. But let's go ahead and flatline those pieces, because once we get the bodice part together, then we can do the skirt, and hopefully the skirt can come together relatively quickly. Now, I should say that I started with McCall's 7763. This bodice at this point is really a long way from this, and the skirt is going to be completely ignoring this. This has an underskirt and then an overskirt that's split in the front, and all of the pieces of the skirt are shaped. And I just feel like that's probably not what they did in this era, because really all of the other skirts that I've done in historical costuming for anything really like pre-1820s, they are straight panels. And so I have a little bit of doubts whether this would actually realistically have been cut in shaped panels. And because I'm working with a relatively limited amount of fabric, and I've already checked that I can get away with doing 3 panels of this and have a super nice full skirt and still have fabric left over for the sleeves, I am going to be doing straight panels on my skirt, and I'm going to be doing 3 of them because that's what works. I am also going to be foregoing a train because I'm going to be wearing this at a Ren fair. Trains and Ren fairs just don't mix. So anyway, I'm going to do the bodice and then we will get to putting that skirt together. Silly me, I'm not supposed to be flatlining this. I'm supposed to be bag lining this, and I'm supposed to have put boning in the lining. I forgot all about that, and I only remembered after I had already sewn at one side of serging. So I'm now going to pick that serging out and unpin these and put some boning channels in the bodice, in the flat lining, and it's not going to be flat lining. And then I'm going to put it back together, but bag lined. So yeah, never mind. We're not putting it together that easily because we have more work to do on this, because we need more support within this bodice. And also bag lining this is actually going to be a lot easier because it means that I don't have to go around binding all of the like neckline, arm size, etc. The bag lining will be so much easier. So yeah, scratch that. I'm going to go pick out some serging. So in the original pattern, there were only, I think, 2 pieces of boning in each side of the front and 2 again in the back. There doesn't seem to be any other placement for boning anywhere else marked on the pattern. However, I know that in Angela Clayton's blog about this project, like when she was first debuting the pattern, she mentioned that she basically doubled the boning. So we are going to put more boning in. I think it would be really good to have some like up the center front, and then maybe even like 2 or 1 in the center and 2 kind of off to the sides a little bit. And then we could do those kind of diagonal. And then we definitely need boning along where the lacing is going to be, because otherwise the lacing isn't going to be stabilized. So although I am a little bit worried about that poking me in the armpit, I do think that's important. So we're going to put boning basically right in from the seam allowance, and then have a space for the eyelets to be put, and then have another boning channel right next to that. And I'm just using bias tape for this. This is the last of my like Joann's bought bias tape, but I do have a big roll of bias tape in black coming from Amazon. So if we run out of this, hopefully that will be here, I think tomorrow. But let's go ahead, put some channels in here, also in the back. In the back, I will probably array them similarly, and then we can get going with actually putting this together. Editing Rebecca here. I forgot to mention that I actually did not use standard 1/2 inch wide bias tape, like pre-made bias tape. I actually went and I took, I think it was the extra wide single fold, the one that's like twice the width but then only folds in the edges. I think it was that one. And I took that and I actually cut it down the middle and refolded it into slightly narrower bias tape. So this is like about 3/8 of an inch. And I did this because I used German plastic boning, synthetic whalebone, and it's a lot narrower. And so like if I were to use this in regular single fold bias tape, I would either waste a lot on the edges where it's just kind of flapping there, or I would have too wide of a channel for this and this wouldn't stay put and it would twist. So that was why I made smaller bias tape. It's very easy to do. I literally cut it with the rotary cutter and then refolded it using a bias tape maker. I have showed you guys how to use bias tape makers before, but they are super, super handy. You can get them in all sorts of sizes, and I'll link a couple down in the description. But yeah, I have shown you that before, so hopefully you know what I'm talking about because I didn't film it this time. Sorry. The boning channels are all now sewn into the front and the back. You can see I decided to make these a little shorter than I had originally intended because I just don't feel like boning will work going up that high. So yeah, I've put the boning channels in. I'm not putting the bones in the boning channels in yet though, because I don't want bones in when I go to do the eyelets, because I'm actually going to do those on my Viking Emerald, which means that I need to be able to turn them around and around in the machine. Putting boning in makes that difficult. So the next step instead is to join the backs to the fronts, and likewise on the outer also to join the backs and the fronts, and then we can join the insides to the outsides. So I have my shoulder seams together, and normally if you were to do like a fully bagged out lining, you would do the neckline first and then use what's called the burrito method, where you kind of roll it all up and do one side and then unroll it and roll it the other way and do the other side. However, I find that that doesn't give a super clean look to your neckline. I mean, you obviously have to clip all of the curves and everything and press it, but also because this fabric is so questionable when pressing, I'm just concerned about doing that. So I don't actually want to bag out the neckline. I'm going to bag out the arm size and the side seams, which is then where we will put the eyelets over there. But I'm actually going to bind the neckline, and I'm really tempted to pipe the neckline. I don't think piping was a thing in this era, but I was looking through my trims just to see like what trims I have that I could use for this period. And I found this, or at least partial piping, that I think I must have used for Aurora, because I don't know why else I would have this. But as you can see, it is like already a pinky purple, but it's a lighter sort of lavender with hot pink through it. And it's really cool. Only part of this is actually piped. The rest of this is just bias, but I could make it into piping. And I kind of like that idea. Like, again, I just think it looks really cool. You can see maybe a little bit more of it here. And so yeah, I might do that for the trimming on the neckline. I'm going to bind it regardless, just because I think that that's a cleaner finish. So I'm going to do right sides together for the arm size and the side, and then we'll turn this right sides out, figure out what we want to do to the neckline, because also if I bag out the neckline and then I don't like the exact positioning of the neckline, I can't change it because it's stuck inside. So I want the ability to like lower this if I want to, or add trimming, add piping, etc. And also this just gives me more access kind of to everything. So yeah, I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to do the machine eyelets on the side. I have done a whole short as an eyelet tutorial, so I don't know how much detail I'm going to show you. I will link that short up here, and I will also put it down in the description because that goes into a lot more detail. But basically, if you have a Viking, they at once made an eyelet plate which fit onto the machine, and you can make functional eyelets, because the eyelets that you normally see within your decorative stitching, those are not functional. Those are purely decorative. You can't actually put any stress on that like you would on a hand-bound eyelet, or like you would on the kind that the eyelet plate does, which is just using a zigzag stitch over like an edge that already exists basically. So yeah, just FYI, don't use your decorative eyelets. Check out my short to see the full details on how to do the actual functional eyelets, but only if you can get your hands on an eyelet plate, because Viking doesn't make them anymore, which is unfortunate. So I'm in the process of working on the eyelets right now. I literally just have this side to go over here, but I needed a little bit of a break, and I wanted to start thinking about trims, because if I order trims now from Amazon, then a lot of them can get here on Monday, and that would be great. However, I do have this trim in my stash. It's been in my stash for a really long time, and it's actually like beaded and sequined trim, which is kind of cool. I'm not really sure what you're supposed to do with the edges on something like this, but I think just like folding and pressing them under and then applying this by hand could work. This might be really pretty all along the neckline with the edges folded in, of course. Or I could do something much simpler like velvet. I kind of like the look of this navy velvet. I don't know that I have enough of this, but I could easily get more. But to do like a band of the navy velvet, you do see a lot of this where you see like velvet bands decorating. I feel like maybe it's not quite as nice as like beaded trim, but it's also probably more historically accurate. So, I mean, I love velvet trim, and I love that you can sew it on by machine, though once I put the boning in here, you really can't. And frankly, if I were to do it before the boning, then the boning couldn't go in. So yeah, no, it's gonna have to be sewn by hand really regardless, other than like the very, very top edge. But yeah, I'm starting to think maybe I don't do piping, because I really don't think piping was a thing. So as cool as this looks, I just don't know that this would be the answer, especially because it seems like trims were usually either dark or they were metallic. So I was looking at my metallic trims. I don't have a lot of metallic trims. I have this one in gold. I'm not feeling gold with this though. I really feel like this is more of a silver color. And the only silver one that I have is this tiny little delicate silver trim. I do like the color of it on the blue, which is why I'm really thinking that if I do go metallic, it is going to be silver. I'm thinking about just ordering a few different options. It'd be good to have more metallic in my stash anyway. That way I can play around with things. It's probably not going to be in this video, sadly. But I don't know. I do like this one. That's my favorite of what I have, but I kind of want to see what else is out there. Though I must say it is also really tempting to find something like with rhinestones on it. This is left over from my 18th century court gown, all the little cut pieces that I had left over, and they're just so pretty. I don't think the pink is right here. I was really hoping to find something like this that I could use at the thrift store, but it came up empty last week, and I don't have time to look for another couple weeks. But like something like that would be so, so pretty. But sadly, I don't have anything in my stash, and I don't think this is something that you can find on Amazon. Well, all of the eyelets are now done and all of the bones are in the boning channels. I haven't yet sealed off the bottoms of the boning channels because I think I'd like to try this on before I both seal that off and also bind off the neckline. So let's go ahead and try on the bodice. Before I go to try this on though, the first of the trims has now arrived. The rest of them probably will not make it in this video, but this one shipped next day. And I thought I was going to hate it, and I actually don't. I think it's probably too gaudy. Like, I think it's just too much. And I thought I would hate the gold, but I think because it's on the black, it kind of makes it slightly more subtle, I say, as this is sparkling everywhere. Again, it looks pretty. I just think it's probably too much, but I'm going to hang on to it and we'll see what else arrives later, but in the next video. All right, I have it on. I was able to do the lacing myself using a bodkin / yarn needle, basically, is what this one is. And it wasn't that hard. It was a little cumbersome. I pre-laced this one up completely, and then I started this one and I got about like halfway, then put it on over my head and then laced the rest. I do feel like that's going to be a much bigger challenge when there's skirts attached, but we will cross that bridge when we get to it. As far as fit, it feels like it does. It feels like a little bit large in the bust. Like, it's not that it's large, it's just not giving me the support that I had anticipated, I suppose. I am feeling the support here, which is kind of the upper rib cage, but not so much the support here, as in my bust. And it could just be that like I'm not used to this instead of a bra or a corset that has more curve to it, because this is basically a flat panel. It just doesn't do that. It could also just be a matter of seasoning the boning, because I put this boning in so that it was kind of curving away from the body. Now eventually that is going to change, because that's how German plastic boning or synthetic whalebone works. It kind of molds to your body. So right now it could just be that it's kind of creating a curve right here where I don't actually want it because I want the support. But I find that if you put it in the opposite direction, then if it's too curvy, you just get this like flip out effect, and I didn't want that. The other thing that I'm noticing, and I think this is just a hazard of this period that has very wide set shoulders, is lack of mobility. I mean, like, we can go to here, but we can't raise the arm any higher than that because this is just too far off the shoulder, and therefore it's inhibiting the movement of said shoulder. Now obviously I still have to get rid of the seam allowance here. I think that that will be just fine. I think the back is at an okay height, but I have to look closer at that in the mirror to see if I want to drop that down any. However, I do think that the neckline here is good, so that's great. And I don't think that the fit will be an issue. Like, I think the support will be fine. So I'm not going to be wearing it with this chemise either. This is literally a shirt from Target that happens to look like a lavender chemise. And I think it goes nicely with this. And I have worn this chemise to the Ren Fair before as part of like a Rapunzel Ren Fair bound, if that makes sense. But yeah, it's not what I'm going to be wearing with this. We still have to make that at some point. But overall, I think that is good. So that means we can move on with binding the neckline and finishing off all of the boning channels, which is good because the boning piece right here is stabbing me in the waist because it's trying to escape. You can literally maybe even see it right there trying to escape. So I'm going to finish those off. I'm going to bind the neckline just with bias tape, not with piping. And I'm going to play around with some trim and see what I like, but probably most of that is going to wait until all of the rest of the trim that I ordered gets here. I'm honestly so tempted to not wait for the trims to get here because that looks really pretty. I really like that. I am kind of thinking I'm gonna go with this stash trim. I don't have enough of it to really incorporate it elsewhere into the gown is the one problem. I have this much. I am fairly certain that if I were to take this around the entire neckline, which I don't know, I guess I don't have to do that, but if I were to take this around the entire neckline, there would not be enough left even to apply any to like sleeves or anything, which would be nice to kind of have that carry on in different places in the garment. But it's really pretty. And it'll sparkle, I think, pretty nicely because of the beading and the sequins and stuff. But it's like a little bit more subtle than, say, like that one that I just got from Amazon. And if I were to put it on now, I could potentially incorporate it into the binding of the neckline, which might maybe save me a tiny bit of sewing. Though, at the same time, to be honest, come to think of it, that would probably be a pain to get close up to a machine sewing needle anyway, even if I were to then incorporate it into the binding, just because of all the beading, because machine feet don't like beading. So I think this is gonna have to get applied by hand regardless, so therefore I might as well wait to see what those other trims look like tomorrow. Because basically, where we are at right now, the reason that this project is going so slowly is because I am currently in a show and I'm currently in Tech Week of that show. The show is Anything Goes at Tacoma Musical Playhouse. If any of you happen to be local to the Puget Sound and you want to come see it, I will put the information for the tickets down below. By the time you are seeing this video, we will have already opened. You will have already missed the first weekend, but we run for 4 weekends, so there's still plenty of time. We run through the second to last weekend of June, and I am playing one of the angels, and that means that I'm tap dancing a ton. but I think I might have some downtime at rehearsal this week to do a little bit of hand sewing. I certainly did like a couple days ago, and I wished that I'd hand sewing, but I wasn't at the point in this bodice where I could have brought it for hand sewing, unfortunately. So yeah, there might be some downtime this week though during tech, and I would love to do things like bind the neckline, apply trim to the bodice, etc., because obviously we are nowhere near having a skirt because we don't have one yet. That will hopefully be in next week's video. So yeah, I am gonna finish off the boning channels here, but I'm also gonna finish off the video here. And next week we are going to look at the trims for the neckline. We are going to add the skirts to the bodice. If we get far enough, probably not, because tech week, but if we get far enough, maybe we will even look at either trims for the skirt or sleeves, because frankly, the bodice is really the hardest part of this, slash, depending on how complicated I get with the sleeves, that becomes the hardest part of it. And I don't know yet whether I'm going to be doing a puff sleeve or fitted sleeve. A puff sleeve is easy. Fitted sleeve is a little more challenging. And that's just because there's so many different pieces usually of these like fitted sleeves when we look at the stuff like from the Borgias, not necessarily historical accuracy, because the historically accurate thing would, I think, in this case, be more of the puffed sleeve. So yeah, all of that's going to come in next week's video. I'm going to finish off this video here. If you like this video, please go ahead and click the thumbs up icon. And if you'd like to see more videos like this from me, please go ahead and click subscribe and the little bell icon to be notified every time I post a new video. I do post videos here on YouTube at least once a week, usually with sewing vlogs like this out on Tuesdays, and sometimes with additional costuming or sewing related content, especially shorts, out on Saturdays, but I post every day over on my Instagram, so please go follow me on Instagram. That's at Lady Rebecca Fashions. And if you'd like to help support all of the work that I do on this channel, I do link to my Patreon and my Ko-fi down in the description below, where you can send me a super thanks or join my YouTube channel memberships right here on YouTube below the video. I'd also like to give a special shout out to my Edwardian level patrons, Jean and Kim. Thank you all so much for joining me today. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Happy sewing!